All right, how we doing, guys? So today I want to talk about something that you might get the wrong impression from the title. Why? Why should the second date not be any fun? Now, this is a situation where you've been talking to somebody, you've wanted to meet for a while. You have the first date. Okay, first date should always be the energy check. That's it, right? A little bit of necking never killed anybody, but for the most part, first date, boom, energy check. What's the vibe? How do I feel? How does she laugh at my jokes? Let's just start there, guys. Okay. If she's not laughing at your jokes on the first date, it's probably not going to happen. Okay. You got to be able to make the woman laugh. Now, as an aside, yes, you pay. Okay. Guys, pay for the date. Look, this should be a universal thing. If I say to you, hey, why don't we go to dinner? I don't care if you're a lady that I'm interested in, or if you're my brother or my mother or whoever. If you're my enemy, if I say, come on, let's go to dinner, that means I'm paying. Okay. Now, I get the gag there where guys want to say, well, you women asked for equality, so 50-50. But unless the date has just gone horribly wrong and she somehow actually really disrespected you, pay for the date. Okay. And if you're concerned about the money, then you shouldn't be out on the date in the first place. Now, you've gone on date number one. Okay. The energy is good. The vibe is good. You got a little kiss, a little bit of necking here. Everything's good, right? The assumption, the feeling might be like, okay, now let's go out on date number two. Let's have some fun. Let's do something a little bit more exciting that might lead to a little bit more physical activity. See what I'm saying? And I'm going to give you my opinion as to why I don't think that that's a good idea and why you should save that. So, date number two, in my opinion, okay, should be not just no fun. That's a bit hyperbolic, but it should be the boundary setting date. Okay, you've met this person, the energy is good. Now, I want to be clear. This is if you're looking for somebody to be in a long-term relationship with. Okay, if you're just out putzing around, dating a bunch of different people, and you're just playing and having fun, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're looking to be in a committed relationship. You've met the person, the vibe is good. Date number two, and you say, all right, hold on a second. I like you, you like me. There's going to be plenty of time to get physical and have fun and do all that stuff. But date number two needs to be about setting the boundaries. And here's why. You might think it's a little bit early in the relationship to be talking about these are the things that I want, and these are the things that I don't want. These are the things I can handle, and these are the things that I can't handle. And I'm not necessarily talking about getting into traumas. I'm not saying sitting there talking about, well, my ex cheated on me, so I'm not necessarily talking about that. But I am talking about, I'll use an example. If you're a guy that does not want your girlfriend to have other male friends, date number two is the time to set that boundary. Reverse is true for the women. If there's things that if you have a line of this is what I'm willing to be, to deal with, and this is what I'm not, date number two is the time to express those boundaries. Now, why? Well, okay, we all know, we've all lived it. What's going to happen if you don't set those boundaries? Date two comes. It's a lot of fun. You have a really good time. Not quite in the bed yet. Okay, I know these days most people are in bed by the first 5 minutes. But let's say you go through the second date. So now you know, right? Now you know the third date, it's going down, right? The energy is good. You can barely keep your hands off of each other. Third date, it's going down. But you haven't talked about the real deep things that you're looking for yet, right? In the guy's mind, you're like, how is she going to be acting online? Is she going to be having a bunch of guys in her DMs? Is she going to be posting, half nudes on Instagram? You haven't expressed, maybe you've looked at her social media and maybe you saw some things that you're not so crazy about, but you haven't wanted to say anything, right? And it can go both ways. The woman could be dealing with the same issue. There's all a number of things that could be, minor issues that they could look like it's going to be something, but if you don't talk about it, it could become something down the road, right? So what happens? Date three now, that's it. it's 21 or craps at this point. You know what I'm saying? Date 3, you've already had the second date where you had a good time. Boom. Date 3 comes, sex happens. You both knock it out of the park. There's lightning bolts and thunderstorms and angels descend from the heavens. And it's the best sex ever since the last time you had the best sex ever. Now what's going to happen, gentlemen? What are you doing? This guy turns off and the other guy turns on, right? So now those boundaries that you already knew when you was thinking with your head, you already knew, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. These are my lines. These are my boundaries, right? Now you're done and dipped your stick. Now you done did it. Now this sucker is like I don't know, sex, okay? You're not thinking clearly at all. Then what's going to happen? By the time you start talking about some of these things, by the time, now you're 5, 6 dates down the road, you've been knocking it out of the park, for 3 or 4 weeks now. And now you start to bring up, I'm not really kind of comfortable with you having all these guy friends, and you go and you hang out at their house. And if we're going to be serious, that's going to have to stop. And she's like, whoa, dude, what? No. And you know that I'm not going to give you the whole strong, independent woman's speech, because at this point, it really isn't her fault. Okay. You already done screwed up by not telling her what your boundaries were before you had the sex. Again, if you're thinking about a long-term relationship, you have to discuss these things before the mind gets clouded. Now, the same thing happens to some extent to the women, not as much. Okay, they may be motivated more by, but he's rich, he's really good looking, he's really tall, he's all of these things that I want. So maybe the flip side of that is you might say, well, because he's all these great things that I want, I won't have guy friends. Okay, I won't post these pictures, or I'll stop doing these things that under normal circumstances you wouldn't have stopped doing because you dove in too fast. And now the water's too deep and you need each other to swim, right? So just to make a long story short, if you're out there looking and you're really looking to have a long-term, successful, committed, monogamous relationship, I have to throw that in there, because if you're looking for an open relationship, some of these things won't matter as much, although you still will have things to talk about. If you're looking to have that normal, everyday, traditional relationship, I'm telling you, it is a huge disservice to you. I know she's hot, and I know that you're concerned. I know the fear. I get it, guys, okay? What you're worried about is, if I start coming out with these concerns now, she's not going to have sex with me. She's going to say, well, then you're not the one for me. Well, then you're not the one for me. But wouldn't you rather know that when you're both thinking straight? Wouldn't you rather figure that out while you're both thinking straight? Because once you have the sex, if it's as good as if you're both feeling it, right? The brain is gone. It's bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. All right? And you're going to be willing, well, okay, I'll deal with this. Okay, I'll deal with that. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5, whatever it is. At some point, using the example of the male friends, right? At some point, she's going to come back and say, well, you didn't tell me from the beginning. You know what I mean? Or she might give it up for you. She might say, okay, well, we've already had sex. I kind of like them, so I'm going to cut off my male friends. And then later on down the road, she's going to say, well, I gave up my male friends for you, and now look at. So that it's always going to come back to bite you in the ass 100% of the time if you don't set the right boundaries. Now, before you get into the relationship, before you even go on that first date, before you start looking, you have to rewind all the way and do a self-check and say, okay, be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself, because you lying to yourself, you can only do it for so long, and eventually she doesn't look as hot, sex is whatever, it's meh, and all those boundaries that you just forgot about, they come back. They're going to come back on you. So you have to sit and center with yourself before any of this and say, okay, what can I really tolerate? What can I not tolerate? And then you take the things that you know you can't tolerate, and you have to figure out Why can you not tolerate them? And do you want to change those things or not? And I'm not advocating that you should or you shouldn't. There's things about me that I know that's a hard line. I know why it's the hard line. I know somebody might look at it and say, well, you should really think about that. No, I don't want to think about it. I'm 51 years old. I am who I am. Okay. That's my line. You don't like it. I don't need somebody else so bad that I need to go to therapy to uncover some hidden trauma from when I was 6 years old to fix this thing so somebody else can do something that is currently not okay for me. That's the attitude that a lot of guys have, especially as you get older. You're 21, 31, it's a different thing. You start getting in your 40s and 50s, you don't want to change. You're comfortable in your own skin. The problem is not that you don't like who you are. The problem is it may not mix, may not jibe with that many people of the opposite sex. And as we get older, we tend to accept that. So you don't necessarily need, a lot of people will say, well, you want me to look at myself and then you're going to ask me to change. Not necessarily. A lot of times it's just looking at yourself so you can be honest and saying, this is how I am. I don't want to change this. Even if somebody else tells me I should, I don't want to. I'm not unhappy with this part of myself. And you present that part to your prospective partner. And if you meet the right person, she's going to say, okay, I can respect that. I can handle that. That's fine with me. Or she's going to say, that's a deal breaker. I can't do that. And then if you're looking at something that might be the perfect relationship, except for this one thing, then if you by yourself make the decision to say, can I look at this again because I really like this person? That's okay. That's okay. If it's your decision, okay? If it's your decision. But what might end up happening if you're not open and honest about those boundaries in the beginning is later on, it's going to be your partner. It's going to be the woman psychoanalyzing you and telling you, maybe you should talk to somebody about this. Maybe it's because of what happened with your mother, with your brother, with your father, something down the, she's going to start psychoanalyzing you. That is a bad move. That is a bad move, because the one thing I can tell you, women, is women think that we don't know the reasons why we are the way we are. We know. We just aren't so unhappy with ourselves that we want to change it. You might be unhappy with it. And the only reason we would change it is if we feel like doing the work to change that one thing about us is not going to change inherently who we are, and that you are worth us going through that work to make the change. But women assume that because men are unwilling to change, that we don't know. We know, we just don't care. The only reason we care enough to change is if we are so smitten with you that we are willing to say, okay, I'll at least attempt to make this change, right? And all of this, so much of that can be avoided on date two. It's very, very simple. Date one, energy check. Date three is when you get busy. Date two is when you make sure that you know and they know and everybody knows where the lines and the boundaries are before you get busy. Because once you get busy, if it's good, the brain is going to go away, the hormones take over, and it's all over but the shouting until 6 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is down the road. Somebody's going to say, well, you should have told me, you didn't tell me, and blah, 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 blah. Happens to all of us. Date two, no fun.